The spring air felt alive with promise that April of 2021, when I, Ryan, a 31-year-old man still searching for my footing, met Lisa, a 25-year-old whirlwind who swept into my life like a prayer answered. At least, that's what she claimed. Our relationship ignited fast, too fast, her words painting me as the man she'd begged the universe for, the one she'd marry, build a family with. I bought into it, her fervor, her vision, until the cracks showed, and the truth spilled out. She'd cheated, not just once, but relentlessly, weaving lies that unraveled everything we'd built. When I caught her, she didn't slink away in shame. No, she fought, pleaded, clawed to keep me. Her apologies a frantic dance to reel me back after I'd already walked out the door. But I'd had enough. Enough of her excuses, her outbursts, her betrayal. So I ghosted her, cut every tie, left her scrambling in the wreckage of her own making. She tried every trick, tears, promises, late-night calls, but I was done, a man broken yet resolute, stepping into silence to reclaim what little of me remained. This isn't just a story of heartbreak. It's a map of the scars she left, and the lessons I carved from them, lessons I'll carry so I never fall that far again. It started in April 2021, a chance meeting that felt like fate. At least that's how Lisa spun it. I'd been drifting through my 30s, a mechanic by trade, hands rough from years of turning wrenches, heart still tender from a past riddled with infidelity I'd sworn never to repeat. Then came Lisa, vibrant, quick-witted, her laughter, a spark that lit up the dim corners of my days. She was 25, a barista with dreams bigger than her paycheck, and from our first coffee date, she moved like a storm, relentless, captivating. "I prayed for you, Ryan," she'd say, her hazel eyes locking onto mine, voice trembling with conviction. "You're the one I've waited for, the man I'll marry, the father of my kids." Her words were a lifeline, pulling me into a future I hadn't dared imagine, and I fell hard, swept up in the rush of her certainty. By May, we were inseparable, nights tangled in my cramped apartment, her head on my chest as she whispered about forever, our lives merging faster than I could catch my breath. It was intoxicating, her intensity, her faith in us, and I let it carry me, ignoring the unease that crept in when I'd question her. 2 months in, I'd try to voice a worry, maybe something she'd said cut deeper than she meant, and she'd flare, her voice rising sharp and defensive. "Have you ever thought I might be stressed?" she'd snap, turning my hurt into her shield, brushing off my feelings like dust. "People who love each other let things go. It's nothing." I'd swallow it, chalk it up to her fire, convincing myself love meant bending, not breaking. She'd painted me as her savior, her endgame, and I wanted so badly to believe it, believe I was enough. But that rush, that blind hope, was the first crack in a foundation I didn't yet see was crumbling beneath us. The honeymoon haze faded fast. By June, Lisa's fire turned jagged, slicing through the fragile peace we'd built. I'd bring up a concern, something small, like how her offhand remarks stung, and she'd erupt, her voice a whip cracking through my quiet apartment. "Can't you see I'm stressed out?" she'd yell, eyes flashing, flipping my words into an attack she could dodge. "If you loved me, you'd get over it. It doesn't mean anything." It wasn't a talk. It was a battlefield, and I'd retreat, my hurt buried under her insistence that love meant silence, meant swallowing the barbs she threw. This wasn't rare. It was every time, a pattern etched into our days, her refusal to hear me a wall I couldn't climb. I'd sit there, hands clenched, wondering why my feelings were always the enemy, why she'd turn a plea into a fight. Then came the nights, the strange, unprovoked storms. Once she'd fallen asleep on my couch after a movie, her breathing soft against my shoulder, only to jolt awake at 1 a.m., her voice slicing the dark. "Now I've got to drive home and do laundry before work. Why'd you let me lie here?" I'd stammer, caught off guard. "I just thought you'd rest." But she was already up, pacing, blaming me for her own choices. Another morning she stayed over, and before I'd even rubbed sleep from my eyes, she unloaded, a torrent. About a coworker who'd stalked her, made advances. Years of baggage dumped raw onto me. It's unsettling to hear this right now, I managed, voice thick with grogginess, and she spun on me. Fine, I won't tell you anything since you don't care. What the hell are you staring at? Her rage pinned me, a spotlight I couldn't escape, and I shrank, wondering when I'd become the villain in her story. Those early months with Lisa weren't just tense. They were a minefield, her mood swinging wild and sharp, leaving me bruised in ways I couldn't name. One night she'd crashed at my place, her warmth beside me a rare comfort, until 1 a.m. when she bolted upright, eyes blazing, voice tearing through the stillness. I'm stuck driving home now. Laundry's piling up for work tomorrow. Why'd you ask me to stay? Her words hit like accusations, her anger a storm I hadn't summoned. I'd only cradled her closer, thinking she'd needed rest. I didn't mean, I started, but she was already storming out, leaving me staring at the empty couch, guilt twisting where peace had been. Another time she stayed till morning, and before coffee could touch my lips, she launched into a saga. Some co-worker who'd hounded her, his advances a shadow over years she'd buried. It's tough to take that in right now, I said, still half asleep, and her face hardened. Oh, I won't bother you then, since you don't. Give a damn, what are you looking at? Her shout echoed, a slap without hands, and I flinched, my quiet plea drowned by her fury. She didn't just lash out, she turned every moment into a test I failed. Her temper wasn't a flare, it was a tide, relentless, pulling me under whenever I dared surface with my own needs. I'd lie awake after replaying her words, if you loved me, you'd let it go, wondering why love felt like erasure, why my voice was always the one silenced. She'd storm off or shut down, leaving me to pick up the pieces, convincing myself I'd misstepped, that her chaos was my burden to bear. But beneath the noise, a question grew. How long could I bend before I broke? By August 2021, the cracks widened. Lisa's phone became a quiet battlefield, its hum at odd hours sowing seeds of doubt I couldn't shake. Her boss, a guy in his 40s, sharp suit, sharper tongue, started texting her late 11 p.m., midnight, his words slurring through the screen when he'd had too much whiskey. Hey, just venting. Rough day, he'd write. Casual but too personal, and I'd catch the glow of her phone across my apartment, her thumbs tapping back. It's disrespectful, I told her one night, voice tight. He's your boss, not your buddy, texting you like that when he's drunk. She nodded, eyes flickering. I don't like it either, but I can't rock the boat. If you don't fit in at work, they cut you loose. She promised a boundary, work talk only, daylight hours. But weeks later, nothing changed, the pings still lighting up her nights. I pushed again in September. It's still happening, Lisa. And she bristled. I just give one-word replies. It's nothing. But when I pressed, she sighed, showed me the threads, paragraphs, not snippets, him unloading about his divorce, her about her sister, her life, even pics of her and her little sis trying on prom dresses. It's not right, she admitted, head low. I've been dishonest about how much we talk. Then another name popped up, a coworker, flirty texts. Always knew you thought I was fine. And she shrugged. Forgot he sent that. Before. Texting him, I wasn't okay with it. He backed off, but her boss? Still nothing. I can't risk my job, she said, eyes pleading, and I let it drop, the unease festering. Why was her career worth more than my trust? She'd sworn transparency. But her promises were air, and I felt the ground shift beneath me, unsteady with every lie she let linger. The unease turned to dread by late September 2021. Lisa's promises to set boundaries with her boss dissolved into nothing, and her excuses grew thinner, each one a thread I pulled until the whole tapestry of her dishonesty unraveled. I'd confronted her again. He's still texting you at midnight, Lisa. And she'd sighed, a flicker of guilt in her hazel eyes as she handed me her phone. Look for yourself, she muttered. And I did. Scrolling past her boss's late-night rants, her replies stretching into paragraphs about her day, her family, even a selfie of her sister in a prom dress she'd sent him. I know it's not okay, she admitted, voice small. I lied about how much we talk. My chest tightened, not just at the words but the ease of her deceit, the way she dressed it up as nothing, while I'd sat across from her blind. Then another thread, a co-worker she'd just given her number to. Knew you thought I was hot, and she shrugged. Forgot that was there. Texting him, it bothered me only after I pushed. She didn't stop there. An ex texted about a wild dream, and when I called it odd, he's got a girlfriend, why's he telling you that? She flew into me. You'll never get our history, he was there when no one else was, she shouted, defending a man who'd dreamed of her naked while I stood right there. Ask him what it meant, I said, and she did. He admitted. It was sex, and she spun it back. You're ruining our night. Her hurt my fault, not his. Every time she flipped it, my unease became my failing, her lies my burden. I trust you, I'd say, swallowing the doubt. But it gnawed. Deeper, her half-truths weren't slips. They were shields, and I was the fool still holding them up, hoping for a honesty she'd never give. September 2021 turned everything to ash. I'd felt the lies piling up, Lisa's evasions a weight I couldn't ignore. And one night, as she slept beside me in the apartment we'd just leased together, I crossed a line I'd sworn I wouldn't. Her phone glowed on the nightstand, and I took it, guilt prickling my skin but my gut screaming louder, unlocking it with a code I'd seen her tap 100 times. What I found wasn't a suspicion. It was a sledgehammer. Videos crisp and undeniable of her with another man, their bodies tangled in ways that seared into me. Photos, stark and bare, of her naked with a woman. Her bisexuality no secret, but this intimacy a blade she'd hidden. My hands shook as I scrolled. Our own moments mixed in, a cruel mockery beside her betrayals, and the air turned thick. My breath jagged as the truth slammed home. She'd cheated. Not once, but endlessly. Her promises a house of cards I'd lived in blind. Morning came, and I confronted her. There's stuff on your phone, Lisa. Videos, pictures, with other people. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. I think there's one old video. I haven't checked my hidden folder in ages. Her lie was flimsy. We'd made our own clips. She'd bragged about watching them. Yet here she was, shrinking it to one. I saw it all, I said, voice steady despite the quake inside. Why lie again? She exploded. You went through my phone? But I pressed. What about the woman's photos? Did you delete those? She hesitated. No, I like them, only I have them. And I stood speechless, her casual defiance a gut punch. What about your location? I asked. Did you turn it off that day? She laughed, bitter. Fine, yeah, I did. Didn't want you mad I was late to work. The admission landed like a slap. She'd controlled what I knew, piece by piece, and I'd been too trusting to see it unraveling. February 2022 broke me open. Lisa's indifference had festered, and one night, after months of swallowing her, Barbs, I snapped. We were in our shared apartment, the air stale with tension when she'd said something cruel. I don't care how you feel, I'm drinking tonight. And I lost it, shoving a lit candle across the dresser, wax splattering, like my unraveling control. I yanked my charger from the wall, threw it down, my voice rising. I can't do this anymore. And she lunged, her hands slamming me into the dresser, fists pounding my chest, her face twisted with rage. Then the knife, a kitchen blade. She'd grabbed to scrape wax, suddenly pointed at me, inches from my face as she screamed. What's your problem? Her eyes wild, unhinged. Hours bled together, me pleading for respect, her firing back insults, personal jabs that cut deeper than the blade she'd wielded. I slept in the spare room, the echo of her violence a weight I couldn't shake. Next day, she softened. That you wanted to hit back says it all. Ignoring she'd struck first, shoved me, threatened me, her words twisting my reaction into the crime. I'd never raised a hand, never would, but she spun it, a masterstroke of manipulation that left me questioning my own sanity. She'd go out after nights with her friend T, a serial cheater who chased men at bars, bragged about it to Lisa while I stewed, uncomfortable with how Lisa laughed it off. It's wrong. I'd say it's got a boyfriend, but Lisa shrugged. That's her life. Her ease with deceit, a mirror I couldn't unsee. That fight, that knife. It wasn't just a night, it was proof. She'd break me before she'd bend, and I'd been too deep in her storm to see the danger. December 2022 tore the last veil away. I'd carried the scars of Lisa's infidelity since September, but finding her text with W shattered what little trust I'd clung to. It was a quiet night in our apartment, her drunk and passed out after a bar crawl with her brother. I'd carried her in, tucked her under a blanket, but suspicion gnawed me awake. Her phone sat there, a Pandora's box, and I opened it again. Months of messages with W, a guy she'd slept with right before me, stretching from August to that very day. Come over. Last night was wild, so good. Her words danced with him, plans to meet when I worked nights, a secret life thriving. While I slept alone, she'd confessed in September, I've cheated in every relationship, blaming W's wealth, his malleability, his family'd pay if I got pregnant, but swore he was her biggest mistake. Yet here she was, chasing him still, a betrayal carved in every line. I woke her at 3 a.m., voice shaking. You've been texting W months, Lisa, while we're together. She jolted up, frantic. What? Shoving me against the wall, her hands wild as she ranted. It's not what you think. Then spun a 3-hour sob story. W was safe, controllable, nothing like me. I dug deeper. Who's A in Samri's? These texts? She'd lied about a woman, but the number matched W. Just wine and a hot tub, she claimed, laughing off my disbelief. Her excuses crumbled, every plea a rope to pull me back, every tear a mask for the truth. She'd never stopped, never cared. I'd given her everything, my trust, my home, only to find her plotting with shadows, her infidelity a wound that wouldn't close. February 2022, I walked out. Left Lisa behind in that apartment we'd shared. Her lies a suffocating fog I couldn't breathe through anymore. She didn't let go quietly. Days after, she'd text, call, her voice thick with tears. I'll do anything, Ryan, I love you. And I'd weaken, her pleas a siren pulling me back. April 14th, I caved, went to her place, stayed the night. Her arms around me whispering, I love you. Pet name soft as ever. Dinner simmering like old times. It felt real, too real, until Easter Sunday when I drove by on a whim during my night shift, saw a truck in her drive, bedroom LEDs glowing while the house slept. My heart sank, texts unanswered, calls ignored, and I left a voicemail, raw. You keep hurting me, don't reach out unless you own this. Own. She did next day. We're not together, why do you care? You used me. Flipping it, her betrayal my fault, her words a knife twisting deeper. She'd begged before. Christmas Eve I'd tried again, 5 days after finding W's texts. Her answers soothing my questions for a week. Then, stop asking, Ryan, or we'll never move on. Shutting me down, blaming me for her sins. She lost her job, fired for dragging managers into her lies, and hissed I should feel guilty. You got me sacked. Ignoring her own wreckage. Her family piled on. You're controlling. For wanting boundaries. Excusing her affair because women get paranoid. I'd poured myself dry, sold my car for one she'd love, chased a thief for her phone on vacation. Yet she clung, a desperate grip I'd once craved, now a chain I had to break. Leaving Lisa that February wasn't clean. I'd packed in a fury, her hands yanking my boxes open, her body blocking doorways. You can't go. Until my family's arrival forced her car aside. I took what I could, left utilities in my name, my dishes, my TV. Get them in 2 weeks, I'd said. But she changed the locks, hijacked my logins, forcing me to call and cancel power, water, everything I'd paid since December. She'd rigged the garage with a camera when I came for my stuff. Half still inside. A petty jab I'd reclaim later. The grief hit hard. Denial when I found W's texts. Anger as I hauled boxes. Depression sinking in as I crashed at a friend's. Appetite gone, focus shredded. I'd stare at my phone, her shadow lurking, anonymous Instagram accounts she'd made to stalk me, and wonder how I'd fallen so far for someone so hollow. She wouldn't fade. Post-breakup, she'd text, "No one but you, Ryan." But Easter's truck proved her lies unbroken. I blocked her, voicemail clear. "Don't contact me unless you admit it." And when she did, it was venom. "You left me." Her refusal to own it the final cut. Friends pulled me through, Mike's steady voice a lifeline as I wept, unraveling the trust she'd torched. I'd given her my all, nights listening, a car for her joy, my safety chasing her thief, and she'd repaid me with chaos. Cutting her out wasn't just escape, it was survival, a brutal lesson in letting go to find myself again. Months after ghosting Lisa, I sit here, 31, bruised but breathing, piecing together the wreckage she left. She wasn't a storm that passed. She was a mirror, reflecting every red flag I'd ignored. Her screams when I spoke up, her lies about texts, her hands shoving me, her knife at my throat, her affairs. The bar, every shadow she chased while swearing I was her forever. I'd trusted too deep, let her paint me as her savior while she carved me hollow. Her "I love you" a lure, her tears a trap. I see it now, her refusal to hear me, her excuses piling like bricks, her betrayals a thread through every fight. She'd confessed. Every relationship I've cheated. And I'd stayed, fool enough to think I'd be different until that Easter truck snapped me awake. I learned hard. Trust isn't a gift you squander, and love doesn't thrive on lies. She broke me. Depression stole my hunger, my focus, my sleep. But friends held me up, Mike's patience a rope I clung to as I grieved. I miss her still, not her, but the dream she sold. Yet I know it's the ghost of familiarity, not love whispering her name. Therapy's out of reach till July. No insurance, no cash. But I'm clawing forward, vowing to spot the signs next time. The outbursts, the half-truths, the chaos masked as passion. She taught me self-worth, not through her care, but her absence. And I'll carry that, a shield against anyone who dares wield love like a weapon again. If this story stirred you, subscribe now, share your thoughts below. Looking back on those months with Lisa, her pleas, her fists, that truck in her drive, I feel no regret, only a hard-earned clarity. At 31, I'd poured my soul into her, built a life she torched with every lie. But cutting her out wasn't defeat, it was defiance, a refusal to let her define me. If someone you love betrays you, don't linger. Walk away like I did when Lisa's infidelity unraveled our world. You're worth more than their excuses. Stand firm, see the signs, and rebuild where they can't reach. She'd screamed I was her endgame, her husband-to-be. But her hands told another story, pushing me away, clutching others, blaming me for her wreckage. It hurt. Months of grief, nights staring at shadows. But I rose stronger, wiser, armed with a truth she'll never grasp. Love honors, it doesn't wound. What's your breaking point? When do you choose yourself over their chaos? If this journey hit home, subscribe now. Drop your thoughts below and join us for more.